Okay, we have 4 levels of data we're going to focus on in this course, and the hierarchy begins from the lowest, nominal, then ordinal, then interval, and finally the highest level of data measurement is ratio. Now the bottom 2, these are categorical levels of data. And so categorical meaning you can put the data into categories. So we could use color of car, or the type of car, the model of car, things like that. And that's generally speaking. And the top 2, interval and ratio, are quantitative levels of data. And so that would be, your miles per gallon, your weight, and things like that. So specifically, how do we differentiate these 2 types? So we have quantitative versus categorical. And then from categorical, we have 2 types, nominal or ordinal. And then quantitative, we have 2 types, interval or ratio. So let's look at some examples to see the differences. Looking at the first one here, we have nominal level of data. So nominal is categorical. And so let's say we have the players on a soccer team. So we could have player number 10. That 10 just identifies the player. It's like an identifier, just like we had identifiers for each of the cars in our previous examples. So this would be the identifier for the player, but it does not assign a value to the player. Same thing with John is an educator. Say John is an educator, so we could assign John to a category, and we could code that category as a 5. But the number assigned to that educator, John, has no value. So we could also look at it even more simple. Just think of a survey that the answers given are yes or no. So we can see we have 2 levels there. We have yes and no, and their categories. And we could assign, say, 1 to yes and 0 to no, just so we have an identifier of the 1 and the 0. And this is how we put them into the computers when we use computer code to model these answers. So we need to put the categories as a number just to either identify them or to make them, we call them dummy variables. Okay, so the next one is ordinal. Ordinal ranks. So you could have ranking. So again, both of these nominal and ordinal levels of data are categorical. So the ranking, let's say, of the results of a Canadian dance skating competition. So you'd have first place, second place, third place, fourth place. The order is very clear. Who came in first, who came in last. But the difference between the performances cannot be inferred by a numerical value. So, the 2 competitors, first and second, might have been really close, and then there might have been a real difference between the second and the third, but how do you quantify that? So you still have an ordinal, so it's still going to be you're still putting them into a category, but it's a rank and it has a natural ordering. Same thing, let's say you have temperature. You could have low, medium, and high, right? So temperature, low, medium, and high, there's a clear order, right? You're going from low to high. It's very clear, but the differences between them cannot be inferred numerically unless you're given some values. And even then, it might not be even, right? There might be 20 degrees between low and medium and 80 degrees between medium and high, depending what the data is. So nominal and ordinal are both categorical. Then we have our interval and our ratio. Interval and ratio are both quantitative, so there's only one difference between the 2, and that is with interval levels of data, 0 is just a reference point. It's just sort of something that you can measure from. So let's say measures of temperature, right? If you're looking at numbers, they have no natural or fixed 0 point, right? Because 0 still means something. 0 is cold, right? 0 degrees Celsius. It's a reference point that we can measure from. But ratios are quantitative variable as well. We have heights as an example, weights, time, etc. and it's the most common, but 0 in this case is not arbitrary, it is fixed. And this means that if you have, say, 0 height, obviously you don't exist. Or if an object has 0 weight, there is no object. So the absence, it means you have an absence of that characteristic. Same thing, 0 time. 0 time means there's no time has passed. So that's the main difference. 0 is a reference point, or 0 is fixed, and it means the absence of that characteristics. Obviously, ratio is the most common in between the two, interval and ratio, for quantitative data. And I've left, if you look at the slides, in the lecture slides, you can see some more examples. Some are taken from the textbook. And yeah, you can look at some more examples and see the differences between the 4 levels of data.